This is lesson 5.1. We're going to be using ratios to compare numbers or to compare quantities. And let's start by looking at the definition of a ratio. A ratio is a relationship in which for every X units of one quantity, there are Y units of another quantity. A ratio can be written 3 ways. The first way to write a ratio is using the word to. So we would read this as X to Y. The second way to write a ratio is with a colon, X colon Y, and we read that the same way, X to Y. And the third way is a fraction, X fraction line Y, and we read that as X to Y. So the ratio can be written 3 ways. I want you to have this written in your notebook. X to Y using the word, X to Y using the colon, and X to Y using a fraction. So make sure you have those 3 examples written in your notebook. So now let's look at example 1. It says write ratios to compare quantities. So Tom's Pet Service takes care of cats and dogs. Currently, there are more dogs than cats. Compare the number of cats to the number of dogs. So in your notebook, I want you to write, we're going to be comparing the number of cats to dogs. And the most important thing to know about ratios is that order matters. So write that also. So if the word problem says that we're going to be comparing the number of cats to the number of dogs, your ratio has to be written in that same order. So what is the number of cats? How many cats are there? 14. 2, how many dogs? 17 dogs. So if we are writing the ratio of cats to dogs, we would write 14 to 17. We can also write it 14 to 17. Or we can write it 14 to 17. These 3 ways all say the same thing. They're all comparing the number of cats to the number of dogs. There are 14 cats to 17 dogs. And the 14 has to be first before the 17 because the cats comes first in the directions. Then it says, compare the number of cats to the total number of pets. How will we find the total number of pets at Tom's Pet Shop? We are going to have to add up the number of cats and the number of dogs. So now the directions say cats to total. So what's the number of cats? We start with the number of cats. There are 14 cats. So in our ratio, we're going to have 14 first. Cats to total. So it's the total number of animals here. 14 plus 17 is 31. So the ratio is 14 to 31, which can also be written as 14 colon 31 or 14 to 31. And so to really represent what these ratios mean, we're going to look at example 3 here, where they're using a double number line diagram to solve a ratio problem. So it says Chen can ride his bike 3 miles in 15 minutes. At this rate, how long will it take Chen to ride his bike 18 miles? Use a double number line diagram to show 15 minutes for every 3 miles. So we can see at 15 minutes, Chen rode 3 miles. At 30 minutes, well, that's 15 plus another 15, so 15 times 2, we have 6 miles. So you might notice the pattern here. The miles are counting up by 3s. The minutes are counting up by 5s. For every 15 minutes that Chen rides, he travels 3 miles. So how long will it take Chen to ride his bike 18 miles? It would take 90 minutes. And The reason this works out is because if I'm going to write a ratio for miles, MI, to minutes. Okay, so we said that Chen could ride his bike 3 miles in 15 minutes. So it's 3 to 15. We want to know then how many minutes will it take for Chen to ride 18 miles. So we want to figure out the missing part of this fraction or the missing part of this ratio. Well, really, writing a ratio as a fraction, right now we're finding an equivalent fraction. 3 times what is 18? 3 times 6 is 18. Whatever you do to the bottom, you have to do to the top. 15 times 6. 15 times 6 would be 90. So that is why the double number line diagram works out. So really the point of this lesson is to be able to use 3 different ways to write a ratio for each comparison. So in order to answer these questions, we're going to have to read this sentence and then write the ratio that they tell us to do. So let's start by looking at the sentence. It says a 6th grade basketball team has 3 centers, 5 forwards, and 6 guards. Okay, so they gave us 3 pieces of information. There's 3 centers, 5 forwards, and 6 guards. For number 5, they want us to write the ratio of forwards to guards. So let's look back in our sentence here. We need the information about the forwards and the guards. So let's write that ratio. How many forwards are there? There are 5 forwards to 6 guards. Our ratio would be 5 to 6. We can also write it 5 to 6. And then we would also write it as a fraction, 5 to 6. But on the next question, when I ask you to put in your answer, you would just write it 5/6 is how you can type in a fraction on your computer. So make sure you have those 3 examples written in your notebook, because now I want you to answer number 6. Number 6 says, write the ratio for centers to total players. So there are 3 centers, and you have to figure out how many total players are there. So let's find that first. How many total players are there? Well, to find the total players, we will add up all of the players. We'll add up the 3 plus the 5, which is 8, plus 6, which is 14. So what would the ratio be for centers to totals? Total. So we would have 3 centers to 14. And then you would write 3 to 14. And the last way, 3 to 14. And let's try one last question. And also, I want to remind you that order matters with ratios. So if you did not write 3 before 14, that's wrong. The most important part of the ratios is that order matters. Whatever way that the words are written in the problem, in the question, is how you need to write your ratio. So for number 7, it says guards to centers. Okay, the number of guards to centers. So go back into the word problem. How many guards are there? How many centers are there? So which is the correct ratio for guards to centers? It would be 6 to 3, which could also be written as 6 to 3 and 6 to 3.